Hey guys, it's Jessie with Omaha Mom Talks, and I have some exciting news. I am partnering with Edwards Auto Group, a local car dealership with locations in Nebraska and Iowa, for a fun partnership called Mom versus Machine. Every couple of weeks, I'm going to be test driving a new family vehicle and giving it the full mom review. We're taking it out of the showroom and into the hands of me and my family of four. We're going to be seeing if it can handle car seats, snacks, strollers, backpacks, how easy it is to clean, how much room do we have, and I'll be giving you my honest thoughts. If you have a car that you have been eyeing, let me know. If you have any must-have amenities when looking for a car, share them with me and I'll be sure to give those a closer look. Follow along and see which car can actually keep up with our family chaos. Welcome back to Omaha Mom Talks. If you are new to listening, I am so glad that you found your way to this space. And if you have been listening for a while, thank you so much. It means so much to me, truly. I am your host, Jessie Gutierrez. I am a wife here in Omaha. I have two daughters, two spirited babes, and I am a mental health therapist that specializes in supporting women. I just want to welcome you all. So this is the season opener for a new season of Omaha Mom Talks, and I just want to name something that feels important to me, which is that I've really never known what I've been doing with this podcast. I started Omaha Mom Talks last year in January of 2025. And one thing about me that you might not know is that I am not a risk taker, quite the opposite. For those that know me personally, they may say, that I certainly am bold or I have big ideas and that I use my voice for myself and for others. But I tend to generally stick to what I know that I'm good at, and I work really hard to perfect that craft and get better at the things that I already do well. So I'm a therapist by training. I got my bachelor's degree in social work and my master's in clinical social work. I've been a therapist since 2011, and then I started my private practice in 2018. And so through my training and through the work that I do, connecting with others and holding space with others during difficult times, that's totally my jam. But this podcast and connecting and posting on social media has been a really big stretch for me. And honestly, the timing of it all matters. And I want to share a little bit about that with you guys and how that relates to our topic today. So the idea of Omaha Mom Talks and starting a podcast came about 3 months after my mom had died unexpectedly in July of 2024. So if you are familiar with me and my story, if not, my dad, who was totally my person, my support person, he also unexpectedly died in 2020. So losing my mom 4 years later absolutely cracked something open inside of me. There's just something very disorienting about losing the two people who brought you to this earth and are no longer here. It changes you for sure. And so during that time, I was dealing with really intense, heavy grief. And like a lot of people who are experiencing grief, and I see this a lot in my clinical work, is these questions that I started asking myself about what really mattered. Oftentimes when I'm supporting someone through their own grief, they'll tell me I used to worry about all of these things, or I put so much energy into controlling this thing and working for this, and none of that even matters now. And so I found myself going through a similar grief experience where I was asking myself, what's important to me? What deserves my energy? And how do I want to show up into this world? At the same time, I had been running a successful private practice since 2018. I love my work. I love the people that I get to support, and I really believe in the healing power of therapy. So I knew I didn't want to quit my work, but I was really struggling with my capacity to take on new clients. For reference, it was summertime, so my mom passed in July, and the way that I work my schedule with being a mom and a private practice clinician is that in the summer, I sit really low in my caseload. What that means is I see less patients in the summer. I work less days, so that allows me to have more time with my sweet babes and do all the fun summer things. And then in the fall, when they go back to school, I will naturally increase my workload, take on more patients. And so, as that fall time was approaching, I was really questioning my emotional bandwidth and capacity to take on new clients and to show up in a way that I think that they deserve and in a way that feels good to me. My existing patients, we were rocking steady. We were doing great. There's just something different that is kind of required from you, or at least that I require of myself when I'm meeting with a new patient and really learning about them and their story and what brings them to counseling. So I was like, what do? I don't want to take on new clients. I know that I have energy to give, but where do I give it? And what does that look like? And I was just craving something new, something different, something that felt like evolving and expanding. And that's where this podcast and partnering with the good folks over at Herd really came in. So I've mentioned this before, but this podcast journey over this last year has really breathed life back into me. I was able to tap into parts of myself outside of my role as a mom that felt really good to me. So, like way back in the day in high school, I was in show choir and one act and drama. And so I was pushed to start posting on social media to put information out there about the podcast. But what I found was that really tapped into those old creative parts of me of like being silly and doing reels. And it really became a fun creative outlet for me. And connecting with guests on this podcast has really tapped into what I know that I'm good at, connecting with people, hearing their story, and holding space for them. This platform has really allowed me to be vulnerable in ways that I haven't before, certainly publicly, and share parts of myself and my story. And along with my guests and their story, it helps those who have been in similar experiences know that they're not alone. As a busy mom and a business owner, this opportunity and this creative outlet has really given me an opportunity that I didn't even know that I needed, which was to just connect with myself as a human while still being a mom and a therapist and a sister and a griever and all these other roles. It allowed me just to connect with me and who I am as a person and a human. And that brings us to our episode today. So, in today's episode, I want to talk with you all a little bit about ways to connect with yourself outside of motherhood and how you can be more than a mom. So, this episode really is for those that are feeling like maybe they're feeling lost in motherhood or that they are slowly disappearing from parts of themselves that they really enjoyed. For those moms that are listening, I know you care deeply for your kids and your role as a mom. And it's okay if you're quietly wondering, what about me? What about my interests? So I want to say this clearly, and I will probably say it more than once. You are more than a mother. Motherhood is a role that you have. While I know that it is a super important one, and I do not take that lightly because I love being a mom more than anything. And I know that being a mom is not the totality of who you are. You are still a human. You have preferences, interests, curiosities, you have ideas, you have parts of you that existed before you had kids. And it's quite possible you have parts of you that are still waiting to be discovered within you. And leaning into those parts does not mean that you care for your children any less. It means that you're allowing yourself to be human and to be whole. A lot of times in the clinical world, we hear about this like mommy martyr role, and we see it on social media and in magazines and movies. We see it all the time, right? Which is moms that are sacrificing their own mental, emotional, and physical wellness for the betterment of their family. And there's so many reasons why moms get lost in this pattern. And it's often involuntary, right? It's rarely a choice that moms are saying, "Oh yeah, my needs don't matter." It's just this constant demands of motherhood that are so high and so loud. This isn't a personal failure. It is structural, it is cultural, it is emotional. Many of us are given messages, even from our own childhood, in adolescence, in our young adult years, up until we reach the point of motherhood, that motherhood is all about self sacrifice, that mothers should be all in 100% of the time, doing everything, being everything to everyone all the time. I even hear from moms in my office that their own moms have told them it's selfish to want time for yourself. I never had that. I've had women in my extended family say, like when I was planning on a girls' trip, well, I never got to do a girls' trip back in my day. I don't know why you need that. And you don't get it, right? I don't need to explain it to you why maybe you didn't need that and that's fine. Or maybe there were a whole other set of variables that didn't allow that to happen for you. But I know that I need that for myself in order to take care of my wellness. And I know that early motherhood, especially when our babies are little, it is all time consuming, right? These little humans, they literally rely on you for life, and it is physically, mentally, and emotionally demanding. So, just the logistics of that paired with sleep deprivation and perhaps postpartum anxiety or depression or lack of support or other family stressors, it makes sense why our world shrinks a little bit and we have less capacity to pour into ourselves. And for many moms, especially the moms that are hyper independent, high achievers, parenting intentionally and researching that, this energy that they have goes all into motherhood. It can become all encompassing. And we get praised for that, right? We get praised for doing it all. We get told this messaging, whether it's explicit or not, of your self sacrificing is a good thing. You should keep doing that. We hear things like, wow, I don't know how you do it all, or how do you balance it all? And these are subtle messages over time that are telling us to keep going, keep pushing. And it also can imply that wanting something more outside of motherhood means that there's something wrong with you. And that simply isn't true. For me and my personal journey, so when I had my firstborn daughter, I was at the time working at a school district, and I had a lot of postpartum anxiety after she came into this world. For reference, I had the normal kind of standard of 3 months 3 months maternity leave. And so at 3 months, I went back to work. We were actually waitlisted for our daycare at that time and wouldn't have an opening until she was 6 months old. And so from when I returned to work and my postpartum anxiety was exacerbated at that period of time, we had this makeshift childcare plan. It wasn't really solid, and sometimes it fell through, and we had family members that were helping us out. And then at 6 months, when she went to childcare, I thought, okay, maybe I'll feel better now because we have something more sturdy put in place. But my postpartum anxiety was still really full blown at that point. And that is part of what pushed me into starting my private practice because I knew that I wanted more of a balance for myself. Anyways, at that 6 month part or month mark, I remember being at a training, a mental health training, and there was a networking portion of that training. And we were getting to know folks, and someone had asked a question similar to like, what do you like to do for fun in Omaha? And I remember like totally blanking. I had just got done pumping like at the event in a private room. And this question was like, oh my God, what do I like to do for fun? Well, okay. I have no freaking idea. Cause if I were honest with this person, I would tell them I'm obsessed with my feeding schedule, sleep windows. We're going to be starting solids. I get off work and I rush home to snuggle with the most cutest baby in the world. And those are really my only hobbies, but that doesn't sound like what they want to hear. And so I was like quickly thinking like, okay, what did I used to like to do before I was a mom? Okay, I like to go to concerts a lot, but haven't been to one of those in over a year because I was pregnant and now I'm nursing and all these things. And I just had no idea like how to answer the most simple, basic question. And that is why now, that daughter now, she's almost 8 years old. So we've had some time. But when I meet with a mom and she tells me, I don't even know what my hobbies are anymore, I don't even know what I'm interested in, my response is never judgment. My response is always compassion because I know that that change that she has made to going all in with her baby and maybe losing a part of herself, it wasn't a choice, it was an adaptation. So, if you are listening and you're in a similar place in motherhood and you are thinking, yeah, Jessie, like I want hobbies, I want more time to myself, I want self care, but I don't know where to start, let's chat about that. Okay, so I want to be clear on something. This chat is not about starting a side hustle or starting a business. I know I mentioned, how this podcast has brought life to me and how I did start my own business. But that maybe worked for me or has worked for others, but that is not what's going to be for you or for everyone. So that may be your path, but that is not the intention of this conversation today. For so many, this is just a much smaller impact change that is still very meaningful. This is really a chat about self-care. And I know there's a lot of messages out in the world about, what is self-care and what do we think of when we think of self-care. And so for me personally, I define self-care as a practice, a consistent practice that is investing in you and your overall wellness. So this isn't a one-day spa day that's like a check mark of, okay, crossed off my self-care for the calendar year. I'm all good. It's certainly not even something that needs to be luxurious or expensive, but it's about taking care of yourself repeatedly over time, pouring into yourself, taking time for you. And it doesn't have to be, hours on hours every day or every week. It's just taking that time little by little, knowing that it makes a big difference. This may look like starting to read again. I used to love to read before I was a mom. And I remember in my early motherhood, I would see, and I would even DM some of my friends who would be posting about books they were reading. And I'm like, I legit want to know, like, when do you have time? When do you read? Like, I loved reading. And I found one year I made this goal of, I'm just going to read 10 pages a day over this year, and found this love of reading that was reignited when I was intentional about it. This may look like moving your body again in a way that feels good. Maybe it's writing, even if nobody ever sees it. Learning something new just because you're curious. Or I often, with my patients, we will kind of look and examine at what are some things that you used to enjoy doing, and are there ways that we can either bring that back to life for you or something like adjacent to it. So maybe that's crafting, art, music, cooking, gardening. I also really encourage you to be in community with others and be in connection with like-minded folks. So the goal with pouring into yourself, taking time for you, and pouring into this part of yourself outside of motherhood, it's not about productivity. It's about taking care of yourself, prioritizing yourself, and trying to feel alive again. And one thing that comes up so often for my patients, and I know that I have experienced this too, is that when we take time for ourselves, we can experience mom guilt, right? That like creeping, annoying voice that tells us like, you shouldn't be doing that. This is selfish, or you're taking away from your family. I hear from people that they will have guilt about even just their partner having to solo dolo the house while they're away or while they're doing their thing. And so I want you to know that guilt is real and guilt is okay. We all experience guilt. It's a natural emotion, and guilt is not always a sign that you are doing something wrong or that you need to be doing something different. And I believe this to be true, especially for self care for moms. And so I want you to know guilt may be there, and you can learn to tolerate it. The goal with guilt, especially as it relates to taking time for yourself, isn't about doing it guilt-free, although I would love that to be the case. But for me and the work that I do to support moms, it is knowing that we can name the guilt and we can learn to tolerate it and still do the act of self-care and pour into ourselves with the hope and the belief that by doing that repeatedly, time and time, taking that time for ourselves, naming the guilt, noticing it, still doing the thing, the hope is that that guilt will be less intense, less frequent, and it won't hijack you from doing the fun thing. If you are struggling in identifying hobbies or interests in this season of motherhood, and I hear this all of the time, I want to offer a few gentle questions to help guide you. You don't have to answer them all at once. Just ask yourself these questions and sit with them over time. Question number 1, what did I enjoy before motherhood? Even if it feels far away now. Not what you're good at currently, but what's something that I did before that brought ease or even just gave me energy and felt really good? What feels interesting to me right now? So this doesn't have to be like the new trendy thing or something that feels impressive. We just really want to think of what feels interesting and use that as a compass. Question number 3. If I had 1 hour a week just for me, how would I want to feel afterward? Do I want to feel calmer, energized, creative, connected? Ask yourselves those questions again as a guide to help you decide what those hobbies might look like and use those as a clue. And question number 4, what version of myself do I want my kids to know exists? Because I want to assure you, your children are watching. I make it a point to let my kids know that I take time for myself where they're not invited. They hate it. They get mad at me, or sometimes they have big emotions over it. But if I'm going to a girls' dinner, I'll say, I'm going to a girls' dinner with my friends. Kids aren't invited. I'm sorry, but you get to stay home with dad and do this fun thing instead. If I am taking time for myself, I speak it out loud because I am raising 2 daughters and I don't want them to think, oh, my mom was always a martyr. My mom never took time for herself, and then hold themselves to that same standard. So I really encourage you to ask, what version of myself do I want my kids to know exists? Ask these questions and give yourself just some permission to explore. And I want to pause and just name and acknowledge the reality, which is that logistics are hard, especially in early motherhood and really, quite frankly, all stages of motherhood. Logistics are hard. Time is scarce, energy is uneven, support is not always guaranteed, and many folks are solo or single parenting. So I don't want to pretend that we all, have the same support or the same logistics, and just make time isn't always the most helpful guidance. So I just want to give you a few tips on how to reduce some of those barriers if this is helpful to you. So thinking small on purpose, this doesn't have to be some big retreat that you go on for your self-care and for pouring into yourself. 10 minutes counts. And consistency, that repeated pattern of taking care of yourself and your wellness, is what is going to make the biggest impact. Saying goodbye to perfection. So this doesn't have to be a ideal setup for whatever this hobby or self-care practice looks like for you. You don't have to go out and buy new materials or invest in a master class. You need to find a practice this repeatable practice that feels doable for you. And that's going to look different for everybody. And let it be convenient, but not impossible. Growth often lives in that middle ground between comfort and overwhelm. And if you're just in the season of survival right now, trust me, I get it. This isn't a demand. This isn't a conversation that's saying, I have to do this. This is just an invitation to look at how can I pour more into myself? How can I connect with myself and know that that's okay? If you take one thing from this episode, I want you to know that you are allowed to be human. You are allowed to take up space, and you can be a whole person with interests and hobbies and a devoted mother at the same time. Those can coexist. You don't have to earn time for yourself. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to rush through it, which is something that I hear all the time. And taking care of yourself, pouring into yourself, it does trickle down to your little family. So often when I hear that word selfish, it kind of triggers me because I know that a well-rested mom, and this is coming from personal experience, I know that when I'm well-rested, I know that when I'm taking care of my basic needs, when I am engaging in hobbies and interests or friendships outside of my role, that I show up as a better, more regulated mother for my kids. So don't lose sight of that, and don't lose sight of yourself. So as you head into a busy week, I want to encourage you, think of something that you can even start this week to take even just 10 to 15 minutes for you. All right, guys, this season of Omaha Mom Talks, I want to chat a little bit more about what to expect. So we are going to have a lot more conversations on grief, identity, transitions, mental health, and how to take care of you. I know that in this season of life and in being a mom, no matter the age of your kids, the world is asking a lot of you. And I hope that we can navigate this all together. So there's going to be some solo episodes just like this one. There will be honest conversations with guests, which I'm really excited for you guys to learn from. And none of this is like quick fixes, right? There's so much nuance to these conversations. And so I want you to think about what applies to you and what doesn't. And if you are like already feeling really good about taking care of yourself, or self-care, as we were chatting about, like, I want to hear from you. What has worked for you? What has made that easier? What have you learned along the way? Because I believe that we can all learn from each other. Well, that's our chat for today. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for listening, and thank you for growing alongside me. I'm excited for what's to come with Omaha Mom Talks, and I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.